You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.
Welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. Each week, we'll take a deep dive into the world of volatility with in-depth analysis, trading activity reviews, strategy breakdowns, cutting-edge education, and much more. We'll also bring you exclusive conversations with the traders, researchers, and asset managers who are reshaping the volatility landscape. If it involves volatility, then you'll find it on Volatility Views. Volatility Views is brought to you by CBOE. CBOE is one of the world's largest exchange holding companies, and we're inspired every day to innovate some of the industry's most powerful products, technology, and solutions. We're the industry's leading force driving access to global markets. A better trading experience and powerful data and analytics to inform better strategies. We're committed to engineering new ways to help our customers realize their potential and navigate the marketplace of tomorrow, today. Visit CBOE.com. That's CBOE.com to learn more about our expanded offerings. And now, it's time to take a deep dive into the world of volatility. It's time for Volatility Views.
All right, everybody. That music means it's time to kick off 2018 in fine form with some vol viewing action. My name is Mark Longo, and of course, welcome to Vol Views for the first time here in 2018, the premier program for volatility traders. And of course, you guys know how to get us. If you're joining us new for the first time in 2018, welcome. Secondly, you missed a great year last year. A lot of vol to talk about. Go check out the archives. We're going to break out a little pop quiz and a little bit from my co-host here. We're going to break down the top 5 episodes of the year from last year. Pretty interesting stuff in there. And of course, if you're super hardcore, you like to see how the sausage is made, you can join us every Friday, noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern, live. Get it right in your ear holes the second it is made here. And of course, you can ask questions, all that other fun stuff. You grab that. How do you get that? Of course, via the Mixlr link, MIXLR. No other letters or vowels in there. It's one of those new Web 2.0 things, MIXLR. Grab it once, set it and forget it. You get this show. You get TWIFO coming up in a little bit. You get Option Block a couple times a week. Maybe you get some interviews and boot camps, all kinds of good stuff that we do live there throughout the week. You get it all if you just grab that link once, set it and forget it. Of course, you can always grab our mobile app. All the other places, our stuff is available if you want to just get them on demand. We won't hold it against you. And of course, however you listen live after the fact, if you're new, if you've been listening for years, we encourage you. Hit us up. Write in questions, comments. We got a nice little backlog here. We've been doing a lot of end-of-year stuff, so we haven't had a chance to get as many questions. I don't know if we have as many to get today either, because we got some stuff to cover today. But we'll see what we can do for you listeners. Keep those questions coming, though. We read them all. We try to respond to them all on the air if possible. If not, we'll get to you in some other ways. But we do read and try to respond to everything. And joining me on the program today, let's see, who do we got on the rotating Vol Views hosting wheel? I'm going to give it a spin here in the Options Insiders. First off, we come up with the person who's on perennial sabbatical. He is formerly the Senior VP, Director of Education, whatever his title was over there at the Options Institute, the CBOE. Now he's kind of just the CBOE man about town. He does a lot of things, and he's also on sabbatical a lot. He is Mr. Russell Rhodes. Russell, welcome back to the program, sir.
Absolutely thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to be at home, where it's a balmy 72 degrees.
It's funny you should say that, because I was just looking at the thermometer here in the studio, and we shoot a lot of hot air in the studio, so it's always warm. And it's about, 2 degrees in Chicago today, colder with the wind chill. And this is the coldest I've ever seen it in the studio, ever in the history that we've been recording in here. And guess what it is? 72 degrees.
It's the same all the time.
It's exactly
There's no global warming at Options Insider.
There is not. It is just perennially hot. You do not want to be here in like August. Let me just say it's pretty brutal because we're always shooting hot in here to begin with, and then on top of it, it's just deep in the bowels of the building. So yeah. It's just warm. It's just warm, however you're going to do it. So, yeah, you never know in here that it's minus 100 or whatever the heck it is outside. Let's see if he's surviving. We don't know where he is. He's kind of like a homeless man just flittering about the city. You never know where you're going to find him. Let's welcome on the Greasy Meatball from Option Pit by way of Carmen Line Capital by way of the forthcoming Prime Meridian Fund, Mr. Greasy Meatball, Mark Sebastian. Mark, welcome to the show, sir. Are you surviving this cold wave?
I am, although I was at the Costco parking lot, and I had to turn off my car to fill her up, and then my plan was to zip home and do vol views. Well, guess what? My car died in the Costco parking lot. So not ultra cold weather and a 10-year-old car, not a great mix. Cadillac makes an excellent, strong automobile. My battery may have seen better days, though. So
hey, which one are you at?
I'm at the one in North Riverside.
Oh, that's too far. Never mind.
Oh, were you gonna come and jump me? They have a jumping service here, so I think I'll be all right.
We're gonna have a mid-show Vol Views car rescue here. That would have been fun. That would have been fun listening for the show. See, Mark, your first mistake was turning your car off. The car's that old. Just got to keep it running out in the parking lot. Hope nobody hops in it while you do your Costco run. So there you go. You'll learn. Those caddies can be temperamental after a decade or so. No, what else is temperamental? It's VIX. So let's get to it. It's time for the Volatility Review.
It's time to break down the latest developments in the volatility trading world. It's time for the Volatility Review.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Volatility Review, the portion of the show where we break down pretty much what's been going on in the world of volatility for this past week. And of course, this is indeed the first trading week of 2018. So everyone's watching, a lot of eyes, a lot of bated breath to see what kind of tone are we going to set for the rest of the year. We all know this time last year, it was a lot of uncertainty because we didn't know we were going to get just in a couple of weeks. We had a new administration coming in. Everyone predicted pretty much the opposite of what we ended up getting. We'll get to our own predictions towards the end of the show as well. I dug those out for what we thought 2017 was going to be. It was interesting versus what we actually got. We'll get to those numbers in a little bit. This week, of course, and today we are recording this, streaming this live, noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern here in the one true time zone, the Central time zone, of course. So most of the major indices, as we finish up the week, taking a little bit of a lift from a surprisingly not upbeat non-farms, and yet the market decided, let's rally anyway. S&P up 0.3%. The Dow up 0.3%. The Qs taking the lead. Tech Love up there, up nearly a full percentage point, about 0.8 right now. And VIX Cash firmly again in the single digits, right around 938. Yesterday it dipped into the 8 handle ever so briefly. Didn't see that today, although it did flirt with it. Got down to about 907 or so before it decided, I want to finish up here, at least for the rest of the session so far, in the 9 handle. I don't see a 10 handle on the horizon anytime soon, but you never know. The day is young. So a weird one to kind of parse. We were talking about this all last year, just kind of the VIX seems to have its own mind these days, and today is yet another day, and the market as well. We'll talk about what you guys thought was the biggest trend of last year when we pay off our question of the week from last week in a little bit as well. But spoiler alert, a lot of you guys voted for the bull market, and that continues today. All right, let's start. Let's go in reverse order, because maybe he's bored in the Costco parking lot and he doesn't want to wait for his jump. So, Mr. Meatball, it's been kind of a weird week. We flirted with an 8 handle ever so briefly out there in VIX land. But aside from that, what was catching your eye today and this week?
Yeah, we did see the VIX get below 8 or 9 twice this week. Which is kind of interesting. And then the last 2 days we've been up with the VIX up a little bit. So it makes me wonder whether we're getting a little tired here. So that's kind of the main thing.
Yeah, we could say that about about a lot of things. VIX land. Is it VIX getting tired? That could be another theme, another narrative for 2017. Some may say, the year VIX died. Some may say the year a lot of smoke and no fire, or the year the VIX kind of just got tired, took a break. Any analogy you like, they all seem to be appropriate, at least for last year. We don't know what the heck we got on store for 2018 yet, but who's looking at his charts trying to prognosticate wildly? It is one day henceforth Dr. Rhodes, once he finishes all these sabbaticals and gets his dissertation in order there. Mr. Rhodes, what was catching your eye, sir, in this first week of the new year?
Well, I'm going to talk about last year for just a minute, and I've got in my mind, a good analogy to what I think is going to happen. Like Muhammad Ali would stand there and just let guys beat on him or swing at him until they were tired, and then he'd take them out. I think that's what VIX is doing. It's lulling everybody to complacency.
So VIX is
making everybody tired.
VIX is rope-a-doping us? That's what you're saying?
It's rope-a-doping us. It's Jake LaMotta-ing us. It's just going to keep on getting punched, and then when everybody's not worried about it, and they're just putting on the short vol trade and then going out and playing golf or going to Costco to get gas or whatever, they are going to be surprised. They're going to come back and VIX is going to be at 22, and they're going to be like, oh, what happened? So that's what I think. I'm always the one that says volatility is going to be higher. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that volatility will be higher in 2018 than 2017. And I have a funny feeling we're going to start reminiscing about single-digit VIXs in the next 18 to 24 months or so.
You wild man.
The beginning of this year, I think there are a handful of people that looked at last year. A lot of the prognostications are for a continuation of what happened last year and this year, and that's when everybody gets surprised, when everybody's on the same page.
What a wild man you are, the man who picked higher vol, I should say, for all of 2018 or 2017, coming out and predicting higher vol for all of 20. I never could have predicted that prediction.
I am rope-a-doping, man.
Since you brought it up really quickly, you didn't get a chance to play last week. You were on one of your many extended sabbaticals. And we all got to prognosticate for where we think VIX will close at the end of 2018. I'll give you a little hall pass here this week. I'll let you go 1 week late. Mark's already trying to change his pick from last week. Tried to change it yesterday. We don't allow that. It's one and done here on the show. But Kevin, I'll give you where we all picked. The meatball was on the low end, 11.01. Kevin was kind of the Goldilocks, 14.04. This is, again, closing for the year. I was feeling I was playing the Russell card because you weren't here. And I was feeling a little bit higher vol. So I actually went 17 and a quarter. So maybe that squeezes you out. Maybe you're thinking higher. Where, Mr. Rhodes, right now, do you think VIX will settle out for the end of 2018, sir? This would be where you unmute and answer, sir.
I was thinking hard. I was going, but you couldn't hear it. I was thinking 15 and a half, and that was kind of my number before you even told me everybody else's prognostications. So I think higher, but less than the long-term average still. This time of year, we're usually under a little bit of pressure anyway. So, if you were asking me to pick a random day in, let's say, September, I would say 16, 17. But December of next year, 15 and a half. I think that's a good number.
Not bad. So kind of a little bit more Goldilocks there. I was feeling my oats last week. What can I say? Sometimes as the host, you gotta juice things up. And I juiced up that vol. We'll see. 17 and whatever. 17 and a half, I believe I was. 17 and a quarter. I was a little bit more reasonable than that. That'll be some good juice. So we shall see if that comes to pass. Listeners have been voting. People saying 13. A lot of guesses seem to be coming in around the 13 to 14 range. So it seems like a lot of people are feeling elevated. Maybe not quite as elevated as I was feeling, but we shall see. Since we're talking about looking ahead, let's really quickly take a moment to go back to yesteryear. All the way back to the year known as 2017. There were dinosaurs roaming the streets, cavemen rampaging everywhere, and a little thing called Volatility Views was cranking away, talking about all things VIX. And we crunched the numbers right before showtime to see, what were you guys tuning into net? What were the top 5 shows you guys really liked, really downloaded en masse, in 2017? I've got the data here right in front of me. I got the shows, I got the release dates. Kind of an interesting mix. Let's let the Meatball go first with his pick. Mr. Meatball, is there? I won't be as hard as making you guess the specific episode because that's a challenge. If you want to, feel free, you get bonus points. But if you want to guess maybe a theme or a time frame that you think really resonated with our audience, have at it, sir.
I think have you seen videos from Florida where like geckos are freezing in trees and then just falling out?
I have seen those videos.
May have happened to Mark Sebastian at Costco. All
right. Well, since we don't have him,
I'll step up with themes on when are we getting the most love around here. First off, I assume it's when Kevin was substituting for me.
Look at you, self-deprecating. I don't have a list of hosts. I don't know exactly who was on every show.
I didn't. It's always more about. Trust me, it's much more about VIX than it's about any of us. I would say probably back in the shortly after inauguration time when everybody.
Here.
How's that for kind of guesstimating in there?
I'm sorry. We briefly were rejoined by the Meatball. What was that? What did you say, sir?
I said that I'm glad that Mark Sebastian's alive, and I also said that I think that probably sometime shortly after the election, or after the inauguration, because people were continuing to scratch their heads and go, what's going on? So I think we peaked early last year, and it's been all downhill since.
Not a bad guess. That is, of course, a historic time. For a lot of people, and I'm looking here at the numbers. I'm going to say your guess is not bad, almost called Mr. Rhodes. You are one away from the top, but let's go in order, bottom to top. Number 5, VolViews 247. 25 is the new 30 in VIX. That was back in March 20th, when we were still kind of digesting the beginning of this new VIX regime, and we were talking about maybe some spikes to 25, and how we always said, kind of 30 seemed to be the breaking point for a lot of people where they took their ball and go home. I think in that show we were talking about 25 seemed to be the new level where people were taking their ball and going home. So interesting stuff there. Number 4, VolViews 255. It was the myth of VIX 50 cent. Coming out back on May 23rd of last year. That is, of course, our friend who got a lot of play in the Journal and everywhere else, talking about this guy who was just gobbling up VIX calls around the 50 cent price level. Didn't work out too well for him, at least on the VIX options side. Of course, whatever else he had on, probably laughing all the way to the bank. VIX options, not so much. But he was a popular one and clearly popular with you listeners last year. Number 3, 265, episode 265. What a historic week for volatility. Back in late July 31st, actually, mid-summer, beginning of the dog days of August, not usually a big time for vols and vol talking, yet July ranking high on this show and also on Option Block yesterday, which is kind of interesting. So we had a little bit of action, a little bit of love there in that late July timeframe. Number 2, Mr. Rhodes, this is what you were thinking of. Episode 239, Trump versus the VIX. Episode release date, sir, January 23rd. 2017. So there you go, Mr. Rhodes. You were very close. One away from the top spot. Well done. And that, of course, was us kind of breaking down what we all expected. It'd be fun to go back and listen to that episode now. In fact, we'll post an article later, listeners. You guys will be able to do just that. Of course, you can always, if you're listening after the fact, you can just go to the VolViews page on our site or in iTunes, wherever you listen to it, and listen to any episode you want. That was 239. It would be fun to go back and listen to that now and kind of get a feel for, hey, what the heck were we thinking in the immediate aftermath of this inauguration and volatility continuing to erode? Is this just a blip? It seemed at the time like it couldn't be permanent, and at least for the last year it was. And then the number 1 episode, this is kind of a dubious thing. I don't know if I'm happy about this or not, because this was an article I was highlighting on the show to mock it. I did not believe in this, and yet it became our number 1 episode. So maybe the guy was onto something. It was episode 268, Can VIX Hit 60 by Halloween? Do you remember this article? It was back in August 21st. Russell, there was some crazy analyst who wanted to get a lot of ink, and so he wrote this article about can we hit 60 by Halloween, and everyone was running with it, and so we kind of mocked it on the show, and apparently our listeners liked it, so there you go. That guy was onto something. Do you remember that episode, Russell?
I do not remember that. That's the kind of thing that I'm doing very good in my old age at not giving any of my brain power to silliness. And that was silliness.
That was pure
So
silliness, and yet we mocked it. So hopefully listeners tuned in.
I don't even remember meeting Mark Sebastian.
Oh, well, that's just a bonus. Just enjoy that. Just enjoy that. I wish I could be hit in the head right now and just wipe that memory from my head. Unfortunately, that is impossible for us to do. Hopefully he's alive and not frozen to death in the Costco parking lot or wherever the heck he is. It's always an adventure having the meatball on the show with us. So there you go, listeners. Your top 5 Vol Views episodes as chosen by you, the listeners. That's what you guys actually downloaded the most. So interesting stuff. Maybe you guys were joining us. Hopefully, I'm going to assume you guys were joining us in our mockery of that guy, that analyst who wrote that article about VIX. Or otherwise, you were just buying it. Either way, you liked it. Speaking of things you like, there's a little segment on this show that you guys tend to enjoy quite a bit. It's called Russell's Weekly Rundown.
Now, Russell's Weekly Rundown.
All right, everybody, you know the drill. It's time for Mr. Rhodes today to hold court, and since Mr. Sebastian is a frozen corpse in Costco for at least 48 minutes. So, Mr. Rhodes, have at it, sure. I'm sure there were just legions of VIX weekly options trades for you to parse. I'm going to guess, what, conservatively, 10 to 15 pages of notes, sir?
This is a challenging week. Do you want me to speak slowly, or we're going to get to a lot of mail? I don't know. The majority of the weekly activity really was concentrated in the January 10th. Usually Monday's a very busy day that's usually the busiest day for VIX weekly option trading or non-standard option trading. What were we watching? Football or something on Monday, because it was we were all watching football. That's right.
Yeah, something
it seems
like
so
that,
long ago. As I mentioned, there's no room for silliness in my mind anymore. So we came back Tuesday, and Tuesday there were a couple of January 10th trades. Somebody sold 100 of the Jan 10th 10.5 puts for 48 cents. They bought 100 of the January 10th 9.5 puts for 3 cents. This time last year we would have ridiculed somebody for buying 9.5 puts. You realize that, right? Like, why are they wasting that money?
Especially at that number 2 episode, January 23rd, you buy 9.5 puts. That's madness.
Yeah. It's absolute madness. We're never going to see an 8. So they took in a credit of 45 cents looking for VIX above 10.5. They actually came back and did this a little bit later at the exact same prices. So I have a little 2 times is what I write to myself when people come in and it looks like they're doing the same size and the same trade. There was a rolling transaction. I think somebody bought back a few hundred of the January 3rd 10.5 calls for a dime, and they sold some Jan 10th 11 calls for 41 cents. They took in a 31 cent credit. Wouldn't be surprised if they were covering a short and rolling out to next week. On Wednesday, somebody sold 167. I love numbers like this because then I can go back and if they try to figure out if they exited or not. Somebody sold 167 of the January 10th 10 calls for 52 cents. Then they bought the 10.5 calls that are also Jan 10ths for 39 cents, took in a 13 cent credit, looking for a single digit handle on the January 10th AM settlement. We also had somebody come in and buy 298, nice round number here, of the Jan 10th 10 calls for 54 cents, and they sold the same number of the January 17th 9.5 calls. Those are standards, and took in a credit of 80 cents doing that. That's a diagonal spread. I was checking the strikes there. They did the same thing with a 500 lot a little bit later and took in a credit of 81 cents and came back again and did 318 more at a credit of 78 cents very late in the day. Maybe they were giving up a couple of cents to finish things up on Wednesday. And then finally, late in the day on Wednesday, somebody sold 139 of the Jan 10th 10 calls for 49 cents, bought 139 of the Jan 10th 11 calls for 29 cents, took in a credit of 20 cents. And again, a lot of trades looking for that single digit VIX, yesterday, and this is what I want to do more, this is probably going to be the blogged trade. this weekend. I two birds with one stone and all that kind of stuff. Somebody bought 300 of the January 10th 9.5 puts for 17 cents each. So that's paying 51 cents for those options. And they sold 200 of the Jan 10th 10 puts for 45 cents each. So that was 90 cents. The 3x2, they took in a credit of 49 cents. Would be extremely happy if we move up above, or if we're above 10 at expiration. I wonder if they did it this way. I'm going to take a look at at the different pricing day by day between now and the January 10th expiration, and just see like if the Jan 10th future trades down to 980 or something like that, what do I think the pricing would be, and how would they be able to get out of this? It looks like they're in trouble. Somebody got involved in the February 7th contracts. We're already looking at February. We will get out of this global warming induced freezing that's going on. Late Thursday, somebody sold 115 of the Feb 7th 11 calls for $1.36, and they bought 115 of the Jan 10th 11 calls for 25 cents. Took in a credit of $1.11. I wonder if they're going to continue to buy cheap calls to hedge themselves on that short February 7th 11 call position. I hope they are. Short naked call options in VIX scare the heck out of me, especially when the strike is not even in the teens. Then today, very, very little going on today. Somebody sold the February 7th 15 calls, bought 100 of the February 7th 16 calls. They did a net. They did this at a credit of 10 cents. I didn't write the pricing down, just hoping that VIX stays under 15. And then finally, somebody sold, and this trade just usually out of the money credit spreads. I'm like, well, I kind of get it. The credit on I hope they're exiting a trade here, because somebody sold 100 of the January 10th 11.5 calls for 13 cents and bought the same number of 12.5 calls for 8 cents. They basically took in a credit of a nickel. I really hope they're not risking a nickel or risking $1.90 or 95 cents to make a nickel off of this trade. That just that kind of risk. Really, I'm really hoping that's an exit trade. And typically, I wouldn't really even talk about a trade that I think is an exiting transaction, but I wanted to make a little bit of a point with that one.
Isn't that the most popular trade that you guys discuss and teach at the first thing you teach in your volatility class at the Options Institute?
What, out of the money credit spread?
Yeah, short dollar credit spreads for a nickel. That's like free money.
No, right? No. I because some people think you're serious. No, the first thing I would teach you is to buy an in the money put when there's a big spread between the futures and the spot. That's what I would tell you to do.
There you go. Juicy stuff. Well done, sir.
Thank you. I'm on my game.
You filled a lot. I thought you'd have like 3 trades this week, and you filled a lot of time. I'm impressed.
I do work.
You actually dug. So listeners, if whoever gets the bonus award for 2017 for who dug up the most quality and, shall we say, sometimes deep in the weeds of VIX weekly options trade certainly goes to One Day Dr. Rhodes, getting you 167 lots there and closing trades for a nickel. All sorts of crazy stuff. Mr. Rhodes, if it happens in the weeklies, he is on top of it. This segment is unlike anything else on the planet because I guarantee you no one else does this. So if you want the VIX weekly breakdown, you got to come here for the One Day in about 2037, Dr. Rhodes. Speaking of breaking it down and breakdowns, it seems like Mr. Meatball is alive, which is good. Because we were worried that he may indeed have expired in the Costco parking lot. Mr. Meatball, are you alive, sir?
I am, and my car works. Go.
Yay!
There you go. We were very worried about you when you dropped off precipitously. We thought that was the end of the Meatball for sure. So we're glad to hear that you were alive. Let me hold court here in the VIX options for a bit, and you can think about any trades that came across your radar this week. It was indeed just a banger of a week for all things VIX options. You know, we were slinging all week long. Monday, huge numbers on Monday. Of course, I'm joking, listeners. It was indeed a holiday. No action on Monday. Today, actually getting a little bit of a pop thanks to non-farm. So it looks like we may actually beat the ADV today, which would be nice. 672,000 is the current ADV. It's been floating around. It got a lot higher in 2017, got up into the 700,000, 750 or 760 or so in that range. And a little bit lower than that. These days, of course, coming off the tail end of the year, not usually a hot time for options action in general, but today, lighten it up. Non-farms giving it a little bit of a boost. Yesterday was actually fairly active as well. 883,000 contracts. Wednesday, 761. Tuesday, 613. So almost every day this week seems like breaking the ADV with the exception of Tuesday. So people making up for the no action on Monday with some action throughout the rest of the week. The call to put hovering right around 3.8, so it's shy of 4, so Russell can take a sigh of relief. We know naked VIX calls keep him up late, listeners, but also a VIX call to put north of 4 keeps him up in just cold sweats all night. So thankfully, he doesn't, at least for those, he has that small 167 lot to worry about, but other than that, he doesn't have to worry about the VIX call to put anymore, at least, which is makes his life a little bit easier. He can sleep easier at night. And looking at what are the hot VIX strikes these days, it's still our friend out here with this three-way is kind of dominating everything. Number one with the bullet, the Jan 25s yet again, 615,000 on the tape, listeners. Number two, the Jan 12 puts, 409,000. So for those of you who are mathematically challenged, that's over 1 million contracts just in those two strikes. That's more than the OI of probably the bottom third of the options industry combined. Just in those two strikes, it gives you some perspective of how much action actually on those strikes. Number three, right behind it, the Jan 15 calls, 397,000 contracts. Number four, the Jan 22s breaking away from our three-way friend here, doing 366,000 total there on that strike. Number five, getting into Feb, our first Feb here on the list, of Feb 22. So that 22 strike seems to be lining up for a lot of people here. 335,000 contracts open there. Number six, the Jan 20s, 308,000. Number seven, the Jan 16s, the extremely reasonable, comparatively very reasonable Jan 16s, 264,000. Number eight, the Jan 18s, about 240 on the tape. Number nine, getting out to Feb again, the second and last Feb on our list. The Feb 15 calls doing 221,000 on that strike. And number 10, rounding out our top 10 this week, the Jan 17 calls, nice little Jan call strip here to wrap up the week, about 220,000 contracts. So still pretty strong volume. Our number top 10 doesn't drop anywhere even into the 100,000 range there. So a lot of action, a lot of open interest out there, really. About almost 11 million contracts, about 10.8 million contracts open, about 8.5 on the calls, and about 2.3 million on the puts. And we're all so excited to see that he is indeed still alive. So, Mr. Meatball, in addition to celebrating life, what caught your eye in VIX options this week, sir?
Our old friend 50 Cent is back. He bought 50,000 of the Jan 20 calls for 46 cents. So, and he's also done a couple other trades. I think the most interesting trade I saw, there's been a buyer of almost 50,000 of the March 10 calls. And that, to me, is pretty unique. And, those are in the money. It's basically a de facto future. Somebody's making a bet that March future below 13 is probably a little overdone. And I don't blame him because February, March tends to be a little rocky, and that's not a bad time to play in that.
Yeah, those futures are kind of crazy. Speaking of crazy, we got your cohort here, the Rock Lobster, chiming in as well here in the background of the show, saying he is surviving the blizzard, so he's good there. The bomb, cyclone, whatever they're calling it up there on the Northeast, doesn't scare the Mainers out there. It may scare the people in Georgia and Florida who are not used to such things. The Mainers, they're used to that kind of stuff. Speaking of things we're kind of used to here on the show, we're used to new types of products, new ways to measure volatility coming out all the time. We've debated and discussed many of them here on the old program. It seems like every investing house out there has to have their own proprietary flavor. They take the 2 month, how long does it take to pay off a 2-month SPX, 5% out of the money put, or how many calls versus puts do you have to write? Some sort of proprietary spin on the VIX that they have to do to A, make it their own, and B, be able to turn around and sell it as some sort of great innovation to their paying subscribers and customers. Now we have yet another one. This is not coming out of a big house, though. This is coming out of academia. A lot of people have written in asking us about this one. We've been kind of busy on the show, didn't have a chance to get to it. We can break it down a little bit now. This is, I guess you can call this the uncertainty index. They claim that, VIX is, the fear index, and they say their index is going to measure the unknown unknowns. Trying to borrow the Rumsfeld phrase there. This comes from Menachem Brenner of NYU and Yehuda Izakian of Baruch College. And they're picking up on kind of the notion of what we kind of determine right now is, vol and kind of risk and what they term to be uncertainty, a.k.a. The unknown. So they have their uncertainty gauge here. I think that's what they're calling it. I don't know if they have an official name. I do have one criticism right off the bat, is that the quoting mechanics, the quoting mechanism, actually, the actual number they're spitting out does nothing to fire the imagination. It's in the low single digits. They say in October their gauge hit 242, the highest reading in monthly data that they have going back to 1993. Their previous peak of using their back data was at 241 back in October of 2008, and then it retreated towards the end of the year a little bit to 2.28, still their third highest reading on record. So they're saying the VIX is eroding, going down. Their measure of uncertainty, though, is going up. Therefore, it is a superior model. They don't get into a lot here. I'll have to dig a little more. The article everyone sent us doesn't really dig into the methodology too much. They say it's going to be published in the Journal of Finance, so maybe when that comes out, we'll see a little bit more review and breaking down of the mechanics of this thing. Mr. Rhodes, I'm sure you're probably familiar with all new additions to the vol space. I think the notion of measuring uncertainty, I think, is an interesting idea. Again, they don't say anything about their mechanics of what they're actually doing to measure this. Have you had a chance to check this one out? And where does it fall on your VIX flavor of the month scale?
I have not had a chance to look at it yet. I heard about it, and I think I saw the same stuff that you did, but I really want to dig into what their methodology is before I start to talk about it. I've met Menachem a few times, so I'm going to go somewhere. I'm going to be at something that I know he's going to be at in a few weeks, so I'm gonna sneak up on him and see what I can
sneak up
get
on
out of him.
Throw him against the wall, grab his shirt collars, and say, "You're not going anywhere, buddy, until you tell me the workings of your index." That's what you have to say.
I'm not going to do that.
Tell him I told you.
I'm actually think I'm going to be able to get a copy of the article in a second. So,
well, there you go.
This sounds dubious to me. Let me just say that.
It's high on your dubiosity factor. Why is that, Mark?
Anytime people are saying unknown unknowns, measuring unknown unknowns, they would, if you could measure the unknowns of unknowns, then you would know things. That's inherently is the opposite of unknown.
So you're saying it's like the old physics quandary of observation spoils the measurement. Once you're observing it,
yes,
you're kind of
this is like
data.
dividing by zero. It makes no sense. I don't think that I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this is not going to catch a lot of steam. I've got greater hopes for those Valdex products than I do this, and I don't have a lot of hope for those. So
my goodness.
that would be how I feel about this as a concept.
But Mark, it hit 2.42. Doesn't that concern you? That's huge.
2.42. Oh my lord. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, the first thing they need to do is boost up their gauge a little bit. Get it into the 20s. Make it sound good.
They've already got something that measures unknowns, and it's called skew. And that would be what I would think.
Yeah, you'd think. Speaking of skew, really quickly, I love that chart you had us look at the beginning of the show. Right before the show started, Mr. Rhodes, I believe it was tweeted out by one of the Thompson twins. Oh, yeah. I think it was Matt Thompson, who's been on the show a few times here, putting out this chart. Someone, I don't know who put this out there. This is from Bloomberg. They were trying to find they were trying to claim some sort of meaningful measurement of the divergence between the SPX and the VIX. And they're saying right now that divergence is the widest it's ever been. Therefore, that could, and then the subtitle to this article they show here is, could mean massive volatility to the downside is ahead. And that your comment about skew, Mark, just brings that up. Has these people never looked at a skew graph. You know, the higher the S&P goes, the lower, if all things being equal, the lower VIX should be. So looking at this divergence towards the end, that to me just says, A, things are working right. And then B, as Matt points out, you know, long-term graphs of VIX don't make any sense in terms of looking for progression, because the VIX is not a continually rising index like the S&P. It's its own beast. So I don't know, Mr. Rhodes, you found this one. I'm sure you have some thoughts on this, but just the notion that people try to find a signal in the noise all the time in VIX, even when there is no signal.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of silly. Looking at basically what the person is doing is they are dividing the S&P 500 by VIX. And that, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. I can't even fathom as to why they chose to do something like this. Apparently, shortly after, was it which Thompson was it? I've forgotten which one it was.
It was Matt.
Well, it was Matt. Shortly after Matt took, and he was very nice. He took a screenshot of it and didn't say who it came from, and didn't abuse the person that did this. Just took the picture of it because he didn't want to embarrass anybody. But apparently, whoever did this and quoted it took it down very quickly. When they could see that people were like, "This is just freaking stupid." So, and I'm a nice guy. I'm a saint usually, but this is just one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. S&P 500 and VIX divergence, widest ever.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of dubious correlations out there for VIX land, but this is a quality one. Like I mentioned, we got a lot of you guys chiming in for the show, so let's get to some of them in maybe a combo vol voicemail / crystal ball segment. You'll see what I'm talking about in a second.
It's time to share your thoughts and opinions with your fellow volatility traders. It's time to check the Volatility voicemail. Make your voice heard by dialing 779-669-4VOL. Posting a comment on the optionsinsider.com, sending an email to questions@theoptionsinsider.com, or posting your questions to twitter.com/options or facebook.com/theoptionsinsider.
All right, everybody, welcome to this special kickoff vol voicemail / kind of crystal ball, because a little bit of prognostication going on here as well. And we asked you guys, well, last week we asked you what's your enduring memory event or trend of 2017. We gave you the choices of the death of volatility, the rise of Bitcoin, the unstoppable bull, or other. You guys sent in a bunch of good things for other. 49% taking it with the unstoppable bull. 32% rise of Bitcoin, number 2. I thought the death of vol would resonate a little more, but only got 16% there. So unstoppable bull, trumping even Bitcoin. Not many things can say that these days, yet the bull market continuing to gore people left, right, and center with those horns. We asked you this week our first kickoff question of the week, kind of appropriate, certainly appropriate for this show. Very simple. Where do you think VIX will close at the end of the year? We've all weighed in now last week and this week with our thoughts, what we think VIX is going to do towards the end of the year. And now it's time for the listener's turn. Mr. Meatball, we shall start with you. You've already weighed in on what your thoughts are for the end of the year. Now, where do you think our listeners are falling for VIX at the end of 2018?
Now, I was on Option Block yesterday, so I'm a little privy to this. But I was going to say I think the listeners are 10 to 12. That would be my guess. And I attempted to revise my end-of-year guess yesterday, only to be shut down by the dictatorship that is the Longo Option Insider conglomerate.
The books are closed, sir. The ink is dry. There is no changing. Mr. Rhodes got an extra week to think about it because he wasn't here. I was being charitable, but there's no revisionist. The only thing I want to go back and maybe trim my 17 and a quarter a little bit. Nope. I was feeling it in the moment, and that's what we got. We live with our choices, sir. Such is life. All right, Mr. Rhodes. We have 4 choices here. We gave our audience between 7.5 and 9.99, between 10 and 12.49, between 12.5 and 14.99, and then north of 15. Where do you think our audience has fallen, sir?
I didn't catch the whole range, but the one just below 15.
So between 12.5 and 14.99 is what you're thinking? Okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
that one.
Interesting. And it turns out our audience is kind of evenly split in two tranches. The winner so far right now, just slightly, is above 15, so they're in my neck of the woods, with 37% of the vote. Maybe I skewed them a little bit, pun intended. Then 35%, number two, coming in between 10 and 12.5, so maybe a little bit of an evolution between yesterday option block. Maybe that might have been winning yesterday. So a lot of back and forth on those two. We got another day or two left if you haven't voted, listeners, to come in and change the numbers. I know a lot of you guys are fighting over this one. And then tie for number three, 14%. 7.5 to 9.99, so staying in single digits, and between 12.5 and 14.99. So our audience kind of all over the place, which it kind of makes sense. It's a challenging question, and I mentioned it's going to be a kind of a crystal ball-y kind of thing too. Maybe we will do that now too, because this kind of plays into what the heck I'm talking about here. Phil, let's just play that segment now too.
It's time to peer into the future and reveal what the volatility gods hold in store. It's time to look into the crystal ball.
All right, we're heading into the crystal ball early, but for a reason this week, listeners. We have the numbers. They've been dug up from our final episode of 2016, where we predicted, and Russell, for some reason, made us go out on a limb and get even crazier and predict what we thought would be the low for the year for VIX, the average of the year for VIX, and the high of the year for VIX. So we did that, all of us. Do you guys, either of you, Mark or Russell, remember what you predicted at the end of 2016 for 2017?
I do not.
Russell, do you have any inkling of memory, sir?
Absolutely not.
This was your
But
fault.
I'm sure it was terrible.
You made us do this, so bear this in mind, sir. It was your fault. But so yeah, we have predicted lows, averages, and highs for the year. It was interesting, shall we say. Breaking it down, the lowest low, which by default won, that was me. So I was actually surprisingly, I went to 10. And I remember I listened to the episode, and I was kind of wrestling with that for a bit. But I went down there at 10, and that ended up being, so just flirting on the bit of singles. That seemed kind of like heresy at the time. Turns out, in hindsight, to have been quite prescient. So low of 10, hitting it there. The lowest average we predicted, I'll just give you the numbers. I predicted a low of 10, an average of 15.5, a high of 34.5. Russell predicted a low of 12.5, a average of 17.5, and a high of 37. And the Meatball predicted a low of 10.5, so right above me there. Average of 15 and a high of 24. So the low came to me. Looks like the average, probably the lowest of the averages, because I was at 15.5. So me and Meatball were wrestling there. But 15 goes to the Meatball. Because I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm guessing the average, and Russell might have it. I'm guessing the average for last year for the VIX, probably somewhere around an 11, 10, 80, something like that. And let's see, what the high, well, it's got to be the lowest high. I think actually, let's see, Russell had a 37, 34.5, and 24. So maybe Meatball might even get the high there with a 24, which is close to where we spiked for the year, I believe, unless we had a blip higher. So there you go. That's what we predicted for the end for all of 2017. Actually, it wasn't as terribly off base as I thought. So not a bad. Well done to both of you. Not terrible.
Well, thank you. I have to say that it seems like other than a couple of periods of time there that we did not have a. I feel like we didn't have a volatility that even got close to, for the back half of the year, 15 would have been closer to the high than the low.
Yeah.
That was what I was kind of funny. And, but it just phenomenal. Now, to be fair, folks, at the last year, we had just had some craziness around the Trump election. We had seen overnight VIX futures explode, and we'd seen the market, whatever. And then, on that year, we had Russell Rhodes, master of VIX, make the infamous statement, "This is not a single-digit VIX president." And, of course, Garrett basically certifying that we would have the most single-digit VIX in history. I think that if you take into context what we were looking at, we look less dumb or less off than maybe we ended up.
Yeah, it wasn't as when I first started hearing that, I was like, oh, we're gonna be predicting crazy. Our low will be 22 or something stupid. But we were all actually fairly close on the low. The average a little high. Russell, of course, high on the high, but that's his thing. So if he wasn't, I'd be concerned. So it actually was not as, despite what we were predicting, what we were thinking was going to happen, our predictions actually not as far off. Let's see how you guys did last year. We asked you guys a bunch of times throughout the year, what did you think was going to happen with VIX coming forward? A bunch of times I just pulled a handful of them of our polls, our question of the weeks. We asked you back on August 17th. That was one of the few moments where VIX kind of roared to life. On that, actually August 10th, we had the VIX hit a high of 16.17. And so we asked you guys, okay, is this it? Is this the time of a new VIX regime, or is it just a temporary blip? What do you think we're going to hit first? We're going to hit break 20 first, or you're going to go back to single digits first? 51% of you back in August said we're going to break 20 first. Only 28% said single digits. That 21% said the heck of it, I'm going to cash. And turns out half of you were wrong because we did hit back. We flirted. We got as high again after that. We got up to about 16.66 the next day, and that was pretty much the high. Then pretty much after that, it slowly back down to 9 handle back in, about a month later or so, back in mid-September. So that one, not so much in terms of our audience being prescient. Let's see here from 9/11, auspicious date. Actually, September 7th when the poll was initiated. We asked you guys, Q4 is looming. Where are you guys placing your bullish volatility bets in terms of which sector has the most vol upside by the end of 2017? Gave you 4 choices. We gave gold VIX, a.k.a. GBZ, the crude VIX, a.k.a. OIV, the VIX VIX, a.k.a. VIX, and or some single name vol like Amazon or something, or actually single names themselves, not even the vol. And 32% of you picked VIX having the most potential upside for Q4. So a lot of you were picking VIX to maybe mean revert a little bit and a little more aggressively than it ended up doing, which was continued to erode. So 0 for 2 so far there in our VIX polls for our audience. We asked you guys again back in October 5th. At the time, VIX was at new lows. We were flirting. Where were we? Let's see. On October 5th, VIX was we hit a low of 9.13 that day. We asked you guys, is an 8 VIX looming, or is this just a blip? Where is VIX going to close just the next Friday, October 6th? And almost 30%, 29% of you said much higher, greater than 9.6. And let's see, this was only like a day or so ahead of time, so it wasn't that long of a prediction window that we gave you guys. And where did we close that day? We closed 965, so that one actually worked out all right for you guys. And so now we come to the portion of the show. Interesting, we have more prognostication. That's just a few that I pulled here, but you guys were interesting. Sometimes on, sometimes far, far off. You guys know the pain now that we feel every week, trying to wrestle that slippery, greased pig that is VIX. Speaking of which, it's time for us to do just that right now. Last week, we don't have a winner because we picked for the end of the year. So let's see. Maybe I will go first because I won 2017 from an overall prediction standpoint. And so I'll just take the front because that's always fun to do, go first. That way Meatball can't come in half a buck away from me and try to squeeze me out or something. All right, let's see. We're at the end of the show here, listeners. We're at about a 940, 938 here in the old VIX cash. Non-farms actually giving a little bit of a lift to the market and a lift to VIX, paradoxically. Weird stuff going on here. We don't have a lot cooking really next week to light us up. So I don't think we're going to have a lot going for us maybe next week. But you know what? Let's see. I'm flirting with a couple of levels in my head. I'm going to lean slightly to the downside. I'm going to say 9.25 for this time next week. And then I think Meatball came in number 2 in the 2017 rankings. So he gets to go next. Mr. Meatball, what are you feeling for next week, sir?
I thought I won. Didn't I win on 2 out of 3?
Well, I mean you won on the high and low. You did. I'm saying overall picks week after week. That's what I'm saying. The net number.
I get it. All right. So, I am going. You said 9.25.
I did.
That would have been exactly what I would have guessed.
That's why I went first, sir.
Yeah, yeah. Because, if you look at the way things are pricing, they're not pricing for a lot of pop. I am going to say that this time next week will be at 9:57.
I think about to say 9:26, in which case I was going to go down to your Costco parking lot and have to give you a nice little
9:57
smack there. All right, Mr. Rhodes, take us home, sir. What are you feeling for VIX this time next week?
He said 9:50. I'll go 9.79.
What a surprise, Mr. Rhodes.
I'm taking it seriously this year. I'm tired of being picked on.
I thought for sure you were going to say like 14.5 or something like that.
Yeah. So, well, you can.
Well, now that we've all picked single digits, it's going to 15.
Oh yeah.
Well, Russell has been.
That's the case.
Russell is possibly the most reliable contrarian indicator for VIX that exists. I mean, he single-handedly ushered in the single vol regime of Trump by saying he's not a single-digit VIX president. Every time he broke on the show and finally picked the lower VIX is when it spiked higher, like that time we had that blip. So, listeners, bear that in mind as you're making your own trading decisions. Russell, not a bad contrarian indicator for all things VIX. That music coming in, listeners, means it's time for us to go out. At least I'll be out for a little bit. I'll be back in about half an hour talking all things commodity vol, maybe a little bit of Bitcoin vol as well. So stay tuned for that if you're interested in that with a little bit of TWIFO. But these two gentlemen are heading out to greener pastures. Before they go, though, let's see what they got cooking. Mr. Rhodes, let's start with you. What the heck is cooking over there in the CBOE these days?
Oh, I'm just doing a lot of work. I get to research and write white papers and whatnot now. So I'm doing some very deep research on our benchmark strategy indexes, especially our Russell 2000 oriented ones. So I can come up with some good stuff, and then Mark Sebastian can go out and start a fund.
Yeah. I mean, my latest fund is basically inspired by working with Russell on 2 white papers, and so you can, for those looking for some smart approaches to the S&P that are inspired by that are managed by Mark Sebastian, inspired by Russell Rhodes, and with a spiritual guide from Mark Longo, you can reach out to me, Mark at Carmeline Capital, and I'm happy to chat with you about how our smarter approach to volatility and the S&P 500 can maybe bring you some exposure to the market with maybe a touch of peace of mind.
So, Russell, since you're the inspiration, I'm assuming you're getting 25%. Since I'm the spiritual guide, I'll settle for a nice 10%. So that sound about right, Mark? About 35% between the two?
Oh, yeah, totally.
There we go.
I was playing on, I had 50% allocated to you guys.
Well, there we go. I take back what I just said. All right, listeners, check it out over there, optionpit.com or Carmen Line. The CBOE, pretty easy to find. It's just CBOE, a.k.a. CBOE.com, to read Russell's blogs and all the other good stuff they have coming out. Maybe you want to see what's going on with those Bitcoin futures. Been trading it up a little bit lately. That stuff's all there as well, CBOE.com. To learn more, and on behalf of the Meatball, who survived the show amazingly, and Mr. Rhodes, who's safe and warm in his sabbatical office, and indeed myself in the perpetually hot Options Insider Studios, I want to thank all of you out there in the listening audience for downloading, streaming, and subscribing, and of course, for sending in such great questions, which we got to none of this week. I apologize. We'll get to more next week. And of course, for all of you listening live, stay tuned. We'll play some shows for you. In the interim, I'll be back in about half an hour for some commodity volatility goodness with TWIFO.
Volatility Views is brought to you by CBOE. CBOE is one of the world's largest exchange holding companies, and we're inspired every day to innovate some of the industry's most powerful products, technology, and solutions. We're the industry's leading force driving access to global markets. A better trading experience and powerful data and analytics to inform better strategies. We're committed to engineering new ways to help our customers realize their potential and navigate the marketplace of tomorrow, today. Visit CBOE.com. That's CBOE.com to learn more about our expanded offerings.
The preceding program was a production of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/The Options Insider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.